Government is set to roll out plans to ensure that only persons with postgraduate doctoral degrees and certificates in education will qualify to teach in the university. As it stands, the qualifications you need to lecture in the university are a good bachelor's degree, possibly a master's, and for almost all disciplines, a PhD in the relevant field. But speaking at the Meet the Press series in Accra on Tuesday, Education Minister Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh also announced that a PhD plus a certificate in education will now be required. Nancy Emefra-Jaradozi was at the event and has more.
Addressing journalists at the Information Ministry, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh reiterated government's commitment to promote quality education. This, he says, includes quite a number of reforms.
From next year, or from this year, these colleges would apply. Students wanting to go to these colleges will apply through their universities to go into those training colleges. They become university colleges of education. And when you finish, your degree will bear the name of University of Ghana and not any other university. It is also to help the university develop the capacity of teachers within the colleges of education.
He adds, anyone seeking to get enrolled into the College of Education will also be required to apply through the college's affiliate university to obtain a degree and no more a diploma.
Now, if you don't hold a PhD, a very soon PhD plus certificate in education, you will not be able to teach in the university. Very soon, everybody who wants to teach in this country should at least have a degree. It has consequences on the national budget because you employ degree holders, you employ them on a higher scale than you employ a diploma. But that is not what government is thinking. Government is thinking that learning outcomes is more important than the budgets that we are pinching.
On the Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, CETA's strike over issues with their market premium and book research allowance, and which has kept the teachers out of the classroom since October 29, Dr. Opoku Prempeh says government is still in negotiations with the association.
We can't say, no, we support them. If government has said you have upgraded them, pay them. Yeah, we'll go through the systems and pay them. But we are asking them to sit down and negotiate with fair wages and salaries. Because though they are tertiary, they are not university. So we would continue to engage CETAC till we come to the resolution of that.
He also announced the Ghana Institute of Journalism, Ghana Institute of Languages, and the National Film and Television Institute, NAFTI, will soon be consolidated into one fully fledged university.
Before the advent of Matthew Opoku Prempeh in the Ministry of Education, these institutions all wanted to be universities. In fact, my handing over note is in. In fact, the current government took it through another stakeholder meeting chaired by Professor Yanka. And in fact, none of them qualified to be a university. The other thing is that they all get award degrees from University of Ghana or one other university. And we've taken the position that the three can be three schools in a university. And they award their own degrees.
Dr. Prempeh also announced that trainee teachers have agreed to undergo the mandatory national service, which they earlier kicked against. Nancy Emefra-Jaradozi, Joy News.
The National Disaster Management Organization is said to have once recommended the shutdown of the gas refill station in Kumasi, where an explosion occurred on Tuesday. That advice was, however, ignored. 12 persons were injured in the explosion at the Trinity gas station at Krofrom, 3 of them in critical condition. Nane Aljima has more in the following report.
At least 12 people, one of them a security person, at the gas station reportedly sustained various degrees of injury in the inferno. About 8 vehicles parked on the premises of the filling station were ravaged by fire. Other shops were burnt down. Intervention of volunteers prevented the fire from spreading to a kindergarten, which shares a fence wall with the gas station. Here is owner of the school.
Before the thing occurred, all the staffs draw all the children to a far distance from the school. So God so good, none of them were being hurted.
Residents suspect repair work being done on some pumps at the station caused the fire.
We were in our room. We were preparing for work. And I said, car be here. We thought it was an aeroplane, and I said, car be. So my mother told me, said, we should run. Now gas leaky. This is not the first time. This is not the second time. And where we are, from our back, we could feel the heat of the fire.
We saw the gas leak, and later the fire followed. We all ran out of our homes to save our lives. The Ghana National Fire Service, after an hour, finally brought the situation under control. Assistant Chief Officer Joshua Ngwa says investigations have begun to establish real cause of the fire.
So we are currently doing investigation. We are doing salvaging and investigation. After investigation, then some of these things will come in. Currently, we've been told of people who have actually been injured. We are not happy. We are not the least happy about it. Our heart bleeds with them, with the families. But we will take our time to go through it before we talk about this place. Because as I talk to you now, I even don't know who owns this place.
Earlier this year, there was an assurance from city authorities that the Trinity Oil Station and other wrongly cited facilities will be closed down. The National Disaster Management Organization says it recommended a closure, which is yet to be acted upon. Kwabena Insenche is Ashanti Region Coordinator.
Yeah, I myself have been here, and I wrote to the assembly that this place is not appropriate for the gas station here, and I was waiting for a response. You know, look at the opposite side. I came there purposely to, emark that place and that they should demolish all these places. So the bottom line is on the assembly.
City Mayor Osei Esibe Entry acknowledges the assembly has received complaints on such station. He, however, indicates regulatory authorities are yet to submit reports on them for action.
We learned this place was supposed to be closed down. And how true is that? For now, I can't objectively respond to this question because I haven't gotten anything from EPA and the NPA and the fire now.
What is the fate of this gas filling station going forward?
The question is that I'm not a technical person. You quite remember months ago I came here with you to do the inspection, but after the inspection everything was pushed on to the technical people among us, the entourage that came to move back and do their work and reports. And even I know on record that it's tomorrow that they will be meeting the regional minister with their reports.
Nana Yaljima reporting.
The gas explosion at Krofrom, where we had the communications manager of the National Petroleum Authority, Anio Sabote, answering some questions for us on phone now. Thank you very much, Annie. So NADMO says they advised the authority to close down, or they advised that the Krofrom Trinity gas station be shut down. Did you receive any such advice, and what did you do with it?
Well, Israel, before I come to that, I would like to initially just trying to sort of use the platform to express our heartfelt sympathies to those who were caught in the unfortunate explosion, and that our heart goes out to them and our prayers as well.
All right.
An unfortunate and regrettable incident. Now, back to your question. This is the very first time I'm hearing this from the NADMO official anywhere at all. And clearly, if you did hear the man, he talked about the fact that you wrote to the assembly and not even the NPA. So it is new. I am unable to comment on that because we are expected to go there tomorrow. Tomorrow, actually, we are going to Kumasi with the Chief Executive Hassan Sampuli and the Chief Inspector.
All right, but the NPA gives approval or has a hand in giving approval to the siting of these filling stations. Did you give approval for that filling station to be there?
Yeah, first of all, but let me tell you that most of these stations have long existed even before the NPA came into effect. Okay, and most of the laws that we've been using to regulate them, we have to get in touch with them and work together to be able to arrive at that. So that is one aspect. So it is not like whether we grant.
Are you saying that is the case with this particular filling station at Krofrom?
I'm unable to speak directly to that, but we have. But what I can tell you is that most LPG refilling stations have long existed before the NPA came, and we started enacting existing laws to work with them hand in hand to be able to improve their safety standards and all of that.
All right. Now, let's move on to something that the MPA was talking, the regulator was talking about, the regulator was talking about to try and minimize some of these incidents. That's a cylinder recirculation model. How far have we gone with that?
Well, we're still engaging stakeholders. Currently, as you know, even one of the GLIBGWA, that is the Ghana LPG Association, for example, took the MPA to court because for them, they feel like they are not in support of the policy. They took us to court. They filed an interim injunction to even stop us from carrying out, the nationwide exercise that we've been having, which, fortunately to them, the court dismissed, and they filed an appeal again. But that notwithstanding, we've been given clearance by the court to go ahead and carry out the exercise. So we've been engaging residents across the length and breadth of the country. We've also been undertaking stakeholder engagement as well. And like we have consistently intimated that the CRM is the perfect fit or the perfect alternative to the very safety that all of us want in the industry.
All right.
It's far better, it's far superior in terms of safety requirements. Right.
All right, thank you very much. We've been speaking with Anio Sabote. He's the communications manager of the National Petroleum Authority. And moving on, the Attorney General Gloria Kufu is urging the Supreme Court to dismiss the case challenging the construction of the National Cathedral. She has described the court action as, quote, a misunderstanding of the character of Ghanaian secularism, unquote. Acting General Secretary of the Convention People's Party, James Kwabena Bonfair, is in court seeking to stop government from providing seed money and land for the edifice. But the AG says a country that has for years observed principal religious celebrations as public holidays cannot be said to be one that does not recognize the existence of a supreme being or God. There is more in the following report.
The 60-page document signed by Deputy AG Godfred Yeboah-Dame presents the case of government in support of the push to provide seed money and land for the construction of the edifice. An initial objection is first raised about whether there is an issue to be addressed by the court. The AG argues there is no issue of interpretation that the court must be concerned with. She further advises lawyers for the CPP General Secretary to head to the High Court if they want some provisions in the Constitution to be applied. On whether government can support religious bodies since the country is a secular state, the AG says Ghana's Pledge of Allegiance and anthem invokes the name of God aside from the fact that the nation observes religious celebrations as public holidays. She concludes that Ghana cannot be said to subscribe to a vision of secularism that does not permit the government to make reasonable accommodation for religion. Government support for Muslims who embark on Hajj has become an issue of contention since this issue came up. The AG maintains the state has not engaged in acts that should lead to a conclusion of undue or excessive entanglement with religion. The AG further states that it will be a fallacy to conclude that Ghana is a state which does not believe in the supreme being or God. She quotes the preamble of the 1992 Constitution that reads, quote, "In the name of the Almighty God, we, the people of Ghana," unquote. The AG wants the case to be dismissed. Hearing continues on November 21.
40 million, that's the number of women and girls around the world who cannot afford sanitary products during menstruation, according to a Boeing project report. 16-year-old Mekeri Seidu, a head porter at Newtown here in Accra, is one of such girls experiencing period poverty. Earning barely enough to feed or clothe herself, Seidu tells Joy News' Faustina Safo she is sometimes forced to beg for alms during menstruation to buy sanitary pads.
17-year-old Mekeri Seidu migrated more than 600 kilometers from the northern region of Ghana to Accra in search of greener pastures. She just completed junior high school and was hoping to make some money to further her education. But upon arrival, reality dealt her a big blow. Life in the city was tougher than she ever imagined.
We came here, we are not getting money. Even a day, you can just walk and you will not even get even 1 cedi to go and bath. Sometimes even the money that you even get and buy pure water and drink is a problem for us.
Seidu has no roof over her head. At night, the cold bare floor becomes her bed. As a head porter, she barely makes enough money to feed. During menstruation, Seydou is forced to beg for alms to buy sanitary products. She tells me there are days when she's had to use toilet rolls and worn-out clothes as pad.
It may be that you get your menstruation, you won't get money and buy pad. Me, like example, I always use 3 pad a month. If you are going to buy pad and 3 and you are not getting money, the money that you use to even buy food is a problem. How can you buy pad and use?
Gynecologists advise a change of pad at least 3 to 4 hours, depending on how heavy or light a lady's flow is, to avoid bacterial infections. But this is a luxury Seydou cannot afford. On days when she's unable to make enough money assisting buyers and traders carry their goods, Seydou tells me she has to forfeit baton and use the same pad for 48 hours, a situation she described as unpleasant.
At our hometowns, when you get your menstruation, you can even bath 3 times, 4 times, but here, because of money, we always bath 2 times. Sometimes, some of us, we cannot even get money and go and even bath 1. And you are in your menstruation period. How will you do? You will be smelling.
To find out just how much some of these sanitary products cost, I visited the Malamata market here in Accra. This provision shop attendant tells me some sanitary pads cost as low as 3 cedis, some 5 cedis, and others as much as 12 cedis.
Mostly is the Yas pad that people buy. It's hardly to see people buying the Always pad and then the other pad that is ahead because of the prices. So people want to cut down costs.
Bernice Ankra owns Sankofa, a non-governmental organization that aims to tackle period poverty in Ghana. She's been distributing free reusable sanitary pads and other products to girls in deprived communities and schools. The reusable pad made right here in Ghana can last for 3 to 4 years if properly maintained.
One of the worst cases I heard is a girl at Tema and Akropong. That's a girl, because of sanitary pad, a girl go and have a sex with a man to get money to buy a pad, just 5 cedi.
Bernice suggests government subsidize the cost of sanitary products to reduce the financial burden on women and girls. She strongly believes period poverty can't be eliminated in the country if government supports NGOs such as hers.
We want government to come in to buy our idea, to help us to reach many girls as we can.
Until government intervention, girls like Seydou would have to rely on the benevolence of NGOs such as Sankofa Initiative, or opt for the cheaper and sometimes unhygienic alternatives during menstruation. For Joy News, Faustina Safu.
We're just getting some news about the arrest of 5 more persons in connection with the shooting incident at in which the Siwa commander, police commander, he was shot. So 5 more people have been arrested in connection with that incident. The district commander and 3 other officers sustained severe gunshot wounds. This brings the number of suspects arrested to 8 as police continue the search for killers of the 59-year-old farmer Moses Oboda, who was butchered to death in the presence of his 18-year-old son at Tumfo Krum near Nsuta 2 weeks ago. Among those arrested include a man said to have fired shots that wounded ASP Dennis Boating, the Siwa district commander, 4 policemen, and the driver of the Bosome Frehu District Assembly. Ashanti Regional Crime Officer ACP Peter Baba tells my colleague Ohiming Teria the 8 suspects would soon be put before court.
With regards to the Siwa attempted murder case that I spoke about on Sunday, we have been able to arrest another 3 persons in addition to the 5 people who were arrested first, making the number 8. And they are being processed to be put before court to be remanded into police custody It is just to put them before court and plead with the court to remand them to police custody so that they will assist us to conduct an in-depth investigations. Because from even here to Esiwa and even to the Amtua, the Sunsuta village, I'm told it's about almost 3 hours journey. And we need to get them in our custody before we can move with them to the scene of crime. The officer is doing well. We have a welfare officer who is in the person of Chief Superintendent Abuaji. He has been visiting them at the Konfanoche Teaching Hospital, and the doctors have told him that the condition of the officer Dennis Boatin ESP is stable and that he is on medication so that they will be able to see if an operation can be conducted for them to remove a pellet that is lodged around in some pellets that are lodged in the neck. Okay. The corporal to Bernard Chetu, who was shot at Ejura, is also currently receiving treatment. His condition too is stable. And then the doctors are saying that he's on medication and that after the medication they will be able to perform a surgery where a pellet that is lodged in the eye, that is around the eye, can be removed. But it hasn't affected the eye itself. We have been
Kwekwa Doboli is a Ghanaian who moved to the United Kingdom at age 12 and schooled and lived there for more than 20 years. He was jailed in 2012 over losses he caused his company in illegal trading amounting to $2.3 billion. He came out of jail early after serving half of his 7-year sentence and fiercely fought his deportation until he was removed in what he described as an undignified manner and returned to Ghana last week Thursday. In the concluding part of my interview with him, he opens up about his crime and his regrets and why for the over 20 years he lived and worked in the UK, he did not seek British citizenship. Let's hear him.
I and my friends in the UK, my family in the UK, have been fighting this thing for 7 years. You become desensitized, right? You become desensitized to the UBS manipulation in the court. Okay, look, let me just say this straight out. I don't think I'm a victim of anything, right? I was a banker. There was a loss on my trading desk, but I didn't have an intent to make a personal gain. I was just trying to do my job as well as I could for the bank, as were my colleagues, actually. We were trying our best. We weren't actually trying to defraud the bank in any way. We were just trying to run a very complex trading book and achieve the very difficult goals we were being set, and we failed. When we failed, someone had to take responsibility. We talked, nobody wanted to do it, but because of the way I've been brought up, you're supposed to stand up, you're supposed to take responsibility, you're supposed to do the right thing. I stood up, I sent an email, I said, look, I'll take responsibility, you guys carry on running this book. That was the agreement, right?
Since you brought it up, let's go back to it. How much money was involved?
So the bank, we were running a $50 billion book.
$50 billion?
$50 billion. So it's at times just 2 traders. By the time of 2011, there were 4 traders, 2 seniors, 2 juniors. We weren't that senior though. You know, we only had 4 years experience.
And you were handling that book?
Just
that trading book?
2 of us, yes.
2 of you?
Yeah.
And what circumstances did you come to find yourself in that position?
So I had been in the bank for 3 years as an operations analyst. I had been brought onto the book in 2006 as a junior. I had no experience of trading whatsoever. The goal was learn on the job as you go. So you're just learning from your colleagues. I was the 3rd person to join the desk. In 2007, 10 months after I joined the desk, my boss left. He had built the book from scratch. And the bank had a choice to replace him or to leave myself and the guy who became my supervisor to run the book. So just 2 of us running $50 billion of risk into the financial crisis. The purpose of the book was to take the risk of our clients and internalize them in the bank in order to protect our clients, and then to trade proprietary risk, to use the bank's money to make profits, to cover the cost of running these positions for the clients.
Sounds all very complicated to me, and I'm sure it's going to be very complicated to the people who are watching. So if you could just break it down for us.
In very simple terms, our job was to take risk from our clients.
So your clients have risks?
They have a position, they have exposures, etc. And they just want to protect themselves going into the financial crisis. So they come to us to get that protection, okay?
So you buy the risk off them?
We effectively buy the risk, one kind of risk off them, and then sell another kind of risk to offset the different positions, okay? So you've got different types of positions, basically. But the point is that it sounds complicated because it really was very, very complicated. There were 4,000 different instruments on the book, every different asset class you can think of, being traded by two guys, right? At the time, I was 27, he was 25, and we were going into the financial crisis, the biggest financial crisis the world has ever seen.
At that point, had we anticipated, or had you anticipated, or do you anticipate that we are going into a financial crisis?
We knew in late 2007, so by summer of 2007 we knew. The rest of the world didn't really wake up to it until September of 2008, so a year later, but we knew in 2007. In fact, actually, we knew in March of 2007.
Essentially, UBS knew, and they're into the business of taking risks.
Yes.
And so they were making money off those risks.
Yes, and you know, to some extent, I mean, to be true, UBS actually ended up losing $60 billion through the financial crisis, through subprime and other bad assets.
Because they burnt their fingers. They were in there to make money.
Yes.
But
they lost $60 billion in the process. This was well before...
If it had gone well, they probably would have made a lot more money.
Yes, indeed. But that's the business they were in. $60 billion was lost. We went to the Swiss taxpayers. They bailed us out. Then the pressure came on us to repay the Swiss taxpayers as quickly as possible by generating as much profit as we could as quickly as possible. Since our trading book was the biggest in the bank, the pressure came on us to generate that profit to repay the Swiss taxpayers and then to rebuild the bank as fast as possible. By 2011, we survived the crisis, by the way, spick and span, generated you know, year after year of profits for the bank. But to do it, we designed a system called the umbrella, and ultimately the umbrella was later called unlawful. But at the time, the team knew about it, our bosses knew about it.
It was legit.
Our operations staff knew about it. Everybody was happy with the process because it was generating profits. We were open about it, and you know, effectively what I said during my trial is, you don't think something is dishonest if everybody knows about it, regardless. Despite all of that, in 2011, after an incredible start to the year where we generated $130 million in the first 6 months of the year, we then made a series of very bad decisions. We panicked, we lost control, primarily because we were working 20 hours a day for years on end, and we were really tired and just lost clarity of mind and control. Not out of criminality, not because we wanted to enrich ourselves, but because we were trying to reach the very difficult goals that
it was overwhelming, and you were under pressure.
Correct.
Talk about the umbrella.
Yes.
What? Who came up with that idea?
So my manager and I came up with that idea, and the idea.
The one who eventually left.
No, not him. The supervisor that took over from him.
Okay.
He named it the umbrella, and the idea behind the process was, we needed to find. It was like a savings account. We needed to find a way to offset the losses that were happening in the parts of the book that we didn't understand. Remember, this is a very complex book, and we didn't understand all of it, and we were really inexperienced. So the bits that we understood, we needed to generate profits in that part in order to offset losses in the bits we did not understand. That was the idea. Okay. Nevertheless, We used the umbrella in order to pursue the extra profit goals that we were being set. And as a result, when 2011, in the summer of 2011, when the market crashed, we panicked, we lost control, we made a series of terrible mistakes, and we ended up losing $2.3 billion.
If you had not panicked, if you still had your, you still had control of the situation.
Decision making, yes.
It would have been different.
Yeah, and so actually there's a part of the story that often doesn't get told, right? Which is that in June, a month before the losses began, I had been sending emails to my bosses saying, look, I think the market is going to crash, right? We need to prepare ourselves. There's countless emails were shown during the trial of me saying, look, I don't understand why we're trying so hard to trade as if the market is going to be safe, sound, and secure.
Okay.
I think it's going to crash.
So you saw the market going in one direction.
I thought it was going to crash, yeah.
And but the whole UBS was moving in another direction.
Correct. The most of the rest of the bank, led by a piece of research that had come out of our research team, was expecting that
things were going to pick up.
Things were going to pick up. And so because I was sending my emails to increasingly more senior people saying, look, I think the market is going to crash, increasingly more senior people were coming to my desk saying, you're wrong. So eventually, the CEO of the bank himself came to the desk and said, Kweku, said to myself and some others, Kweku, I know, in front of others, I know you think the market's going to crash. You need to know why we think the market's not going to crash. And he literally said to us, Axel Weber, one of the former governors of the ECB, the European Central Bank, who's moving to become the chairman of UBS, has told us in the interview process that the European Central Bank is going to take a number of actions that's going to cause the market to go up hard.
Okay.
The problem is he was a year too soon. They didn't actually take that action until the summer of 2012. It was what Mario Draghi, the ECB chairman, said, called whatever it takes. We will do whatever it takes. Anyway, quantitative easing is the answer. Fiscal and monetary expansion, basically, is the answer. So because Karsten came to my desk and told me this, I was like, well, if the CEO of the bank himself has told me, it'd be crazy for me to do the opposite. So we did the trades as if the market was going to rally. Unfortunately, the very day that we changed our positions to match what he was asking us to do, the market crashed 40%. And I guess is the process by which we came to the decision. Because I'd been pushing so hard, because it became a big argument, and then because of the entropy level we had to go through to change our decision, we were like, well, the CEO has told us, so we need to protect the position. Keep backing it, keep backing it, keep backing it. The market kept falling and falling, and then it gets too big, and then you get desperate, and you panic, and you buy more. You go to your boss, he says, buy it, buy more or hold. And then eventually, one day we came in, the market was down 10%, and we just closed the positions. We realized that we'd lost control, the positions were too big, and we'd lost $2.3 billion.
So it didn't just happen. There were a lot of processes. You went through a lot of processes before eventually you got to this point.
There was a number of processes. So the loss itself took 6 weeks. From the moment the loss began to the moment it crystallized was 6 weeks. So July the 1st, August the 13th, about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We spent another 4 weeks trying to resolve the loss. And then September the 14th, after a meeting on the 12th, I send the email and I take responsibility for it.
You say that you took responsibility because of your upbringing. What sort of upbringing was that?
Well, when I say I take responsibility, I think, again, I am often criticized about this. People say, well, you didn't take responsibility because you didn't plead guilty at your trial. But they don't realize that the reason I pled not guilty was A, because I thought it was important that people would know exactly how it happened and why. You know, the reason I'm able to tell you what I'm telling you now is because it was disclosed during the trial. If I wasn't able to tell you, if I hadn't gone to trial, we would never have this conversation. It wouldn't be public knowledge.
Because you had sworn an oath of secrecy?
Well, because if it's not made public during the trial, then if you try and say something, the bank will come after what you say, right? Remember, no one ever criticizes me for what I say about what happened. No one's going to come after me because I've told you this, because it's already in the public domain, right? So what I felt was I needed to plead not guilty in order to get the disclosure, in order to tell the lessons and to explain exactly how this thing happened, in order to protect other junior traders, but also the system so that we could lead to change. When I talk about my upbringing, I'm talking about the fact that when my parents moved us to Israel, the thing they always told us was, I was the oldest, I've got 3 sisters. The thing they always told me was, you have to look after your sisters and your mom. But also you have to look after your cousins and your family back in Ghana, because you're the lucky one. You've been given this opportunity. So you have a responsibility backwards to them. Then I went to a Quaker boarding school at the age of 12, because they sent me to boarding school in Yorkshire, in England. And the motto of the school is non sibi sed omnibus, not for self, but for all. The community is more important than the individual. As an individual, you have to meet your responsibilities to the community in order to earn your place in the community, right? So as a banker at UBS, you're trying to generate the profits that the bank is asking you to generate because it's your responsibility to the community. But then when it goes wrong, you also have to take that responsibility, again, to protect the community. That was the thinking. Slightly flawed, perhaps naive, to believe that those values would protect you in a bank, especially in the UK, in the city in the UK at that time, during the financial crisis. But that's what we felt. I felt that was my responsibility, right? And again, I think that comes from the way I was brought up.
Would you have done, if you had the opportunity, would you have done things differently?
Yeah, so I always get asked.
Would you have still admitted or accepted responsibility?
Oh, that's a much tougher question. Right, so I'll answer the easy version first. I mean, people always ask me, what would you have done differently? I think what I would have done differently is go back to this 27-year-old me and say, look, you need to have the courage of your convictions. You have to believe in your idealism. And you need to recognize that you're the one who can see. That's why they've put you there. So you need to have the courage to go back to them and say, what you're asking us to do is impossible or is really, really difficult. So if you want us to keep doing it, give us more resources, give us more people, give us more technology, give us more leadership. That's what I would do. And I would go back and I would say that. Otherwise, we're going to fail.
And your boss, who had come to tell you that the bank believes, based on the information they had from the ECB, that you feel this way, but we feel that way.
Correct.
What do you have told him?
So I would have said to him, look, I'm looking at the market day in, day out. You know, my job is to try and assess what everyone in the market is doing based on the individual actions of the individual traders that I can see. And based on what I can see, regardless of what the ECB is going to do, I think the market's going to crash. You know, there are emails that I sent saying, look, I would rather make money that everyone can benefit from in the bank than follow the crowd and fall off the edge of the cliff like a lemming. To my friends, my colleagues, etc., I should have had the courage of my convictions and said, look, I'm sorry, you're not sitting where I'm sitting. What I can see, I just think you're wrong.
There are others too who say that here's this young man who found himself managing this trading book, $50 billion, and you're also making some money off it. Quite a bit of money. I mean, you had a good life.
Well, I mean,
a very good life.
Look, we can talk about how much I was getting paid all day long. Bankers get paid well. But the really important thing for me to highlight is that I wasn't driven by money. It's it's really important for me to explain that the reason I was found not guilty of the four of the 6 charges I faced was because the jury could clearly see that none of these decisions were driven by an intent for gain, for personal gain. Yes, I was being paid really well, but this is part of the narrative, the caricature that's painted to separate me from you. Just because I was being paid really well, you need to not like me, right? The focus on how much I was getting paid is simply part of the process of separating you from me. But just because I was getting paid well doesn't mean it was a good life. We were working 20 hours a day. All we did was work. There was no time to enjoy the money at all.
Oh, there was no time to enjoy
there was no time. There was no collection of artifacts. In fact, over £250,000 of my salary was in UBS shares. When the loss happened, all got taken away. Never earned it. Never came to me, actually, right? The other thing that's really important is the UK press always focuses on my salary, always, but they don't tell you the trajectory. It went like this. In the last year, the 6 months before I was arrested, that was when the salary was really high. The previous year, it was half that. The year before that, it was half again. So that 2 years before I was arrested, it's still a very, very good salary. I was earning £50,000 plus a £20,000 bonus. It's still a very good salary, of course, I know. But this idea that I was earning so much money, they try and make it look as if I was earning that money for a really long period of time. It was just the last year where it went like that. So again, I recognize it's a lot of money, it was a very good salary, but this had nothing to do with money. Just because the product of your work is money doesn't mean that the motivation is money.
So now you've been to jail and back, and you have this ex-con tag.
Yes.
Following you. How do you feel about that?
Well, so here, this is a really important question. You know, when the Home Secretary in the UK, Sajid Javid, said I needed to be deported, what he said was, the Home Office is determined to deport foreign national criminals who have abused the UK's hospitality and committed offences. What we've been telling him, what we've been trying to tell him for years now, is that someone who comes to the UK as a child, how can that person still be a guest 26 years later? How can they still be a guest abusing hospitality? Because of this policy, you've kindly said, I've got this ex-convict tag. Because of this policy, what the UK has done is said that I am never to be redeemed. Never. You never get redeemed. You will always be a foreign national criminal. Now, let's be realistic. I went to prison for 3.5 years. I spent 3.5 years doing everything I could to contribute back. I spoke to 7,000 students, sixth formers, professionals, risk managers, even the UK Army itself, teaching from the lessons we learned. I did that because I think it's the right thing to do. It's the responsibility you have to teach from the lessons you learn. So the label is just a label. I've had to do a lot of work with offender managers and supervisors back in the UK, probation officers, who spent a lot of effort saying to me, telling me, listen, Kweku, you are not a criminal. You made a mistake, some bad decisions, but they weren't driven by criminality. You need to shed yourself of this label.
Do you think you've done that effectively, shed that label?
Unfortunately, the UK government has done absolutely everything in its power, using the immigration tribunals, using the Home Office deportation process, even using the media such as the BBC, to maintain the label till the very end. And that process of manipulation, we've already talked about it, did not end with them saying, finally, you have to be deported. It ended through even the removal process. The manipulation and the labeling, the work they've done to make that label stick is incredible. But it is because of the abuses of process that they've gone through to do that, that there is still an army of people back in the UK who refuse to give up the fight. This whole Keep Kwaku fight, don't deport him, is because they recognize the truth. I am rehabilitated, but the government is trying to maintain that position in order to justify a hostile environment policy which must not continue.
Now, back in Ghana, we've had our own issues with the banking sector. 7 banks have gone down in the last year. And there are people who are clamoring for the people who are the helm of affairs to be prosecuted. Some are actually calling for them to be jailed. Now, we look on social media. I look on social media in the past 24 hours since your photos of you having this huge local dish in front of you and a bottle of beer, and people saying, we welcome you. The reception has been quite warm. Yes. People have been quite receptive. But there are others too who say, why is it that Ghanaians in one breath were saying, or are saying, let's jail the people who were responsible for the bank collapse? And yet, they're so receptive of Kwaku.
Well, there's 2 parts to that process, isn't there? Right? In life, people fail. People make mistakes. People often even commit criminal acts. But that is part of the human condition. Once someone has failed, once they have paid their dues, actually a fair and just society expects that that person is allowed to return to society. If we have a society where anyone in that society cannot be redeemed, then it is a society that is unjust. It is any society that does not give second chances fairly, I must add, is a society that is unjust. So I suspect, I'm not sure, but I suspect that one of the reasons that social media is saying, on one hand, we must punish, we must send a message for failure in the banking industry in Ghana, is because they want the bankers to learn and to change so that it doesn't happen again. But once they learn and change, which is the journey I've been on, why keep punishing them? Because surely you benefit from the learn and change.
So you're essentially saying they should also spend their time in jail?
Well, if a court like their peers decides that that is the right way for it to go, then you can't question it. Remember, I said I'm not a victim. I've never said I'm a victim, right? Rightly or wrongly, I was asked to go to prison. I held my head high. I went to prison. I served my time. I did it in a way to make sure that I could use the lessons for good. Granted, that's used against me. They say, oh, you didn't accept your responsibility. But in truth, I did. And the way in which I've conducted myself is so that you can bring back the lessons of change, right? And I suspect those who are commenting on social media saying, why are we still vilifying Kwaku, are saying it because at a certain point, when you can see the effort that someone is making to make amends and to contribute back, it becomes unfair. And that's why tens of thousands of people in the UK are still fighting, saying this deportation from the UK is unjust, because they know full well that I'm rehabilitated, I'm trying to do my best, I will never reoffend. They know that. But when bankers in Ghana who have failed, or anywhere else have failed, if the right thing to do is to find them criminally liable in a fair and just way, then do that. But don't vilify them forever. You need to give them a chance to come back. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, when a child falls, you tell them, get up, learn from it, don't fall again. Or run faster, but run better. Those are the lessons we give children. How much more grown-ups too?
How can you be of use to Ghana? What is it that you've learned? What are some of the experiences?
When I was released from prison, I set off on a mission, and all I wanted to do was you know, do lectures with sixth formers and university students. Right? That's really all I wanted to do, because the Home Office was saying you're not allowed to work. So I was like, okay, what can I do so that I'm not breaking the rules, but I'm still productive, right? So I started off talking to sixth formers. Then all of a sudden, I was being asked to speak at conferences. So I started speaking at conferences. Then I started working with Barclays Bank, the UK Special Forces, the Bank of England.
The Bank of England?
The Bank of England. Even the Home Office itself. How to learn from failure, how to manage risk in the gray zone. What kind of policy changes do we need to put in place to make sure that our institutions meet the social contract to the people? How do we make sure that our institutions are able to rebuild the trust which has failed since the financial crisis 10 years ago? Those are the conversations I've been having, and I've been having them with literally everyone at the top levels in the UK. Now, those contacts, those relationships are valuable because we live in a global society, right? The finance industry is centered in New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, and London, pretty much. There are other centers, but those are the main ones. In order for it to work, you need to be able to interact on a global scale. Ghana is part of that global scale, part of that global effort. We are a nation that's also trying to join the global group and do good things, create jobs for our young, create opportunities for growth. To do that, I think I can help by bringing together the people that I was working with in the UK with the people who are running these things in Ghana too, at a policy level, but also at the execution level, whether it's small investment banks, whether it's groups of traders, whether it's politicians who are looking for policy advice, etc. I think I can contribute to that too. It's a shame that I'm not allowed to travel back to the UK or to the West, because obviously, like I say, it's a global platform, but I will do my best to impart the advice and the learnings that I've had on this journey.
There are a lot of people who keep wondering, you were in the UK for so many years.
Yeah.
Why didn't you naturalize?
Well, the naturalization thing is actually just procedural. So I started work in 2002 when I did my internship. UBS's immigration lawyers advised me that I should go down the work permit route, i.e. get a work permit, work 5 years under your work permit, get indefinite leave to remain, live under indefinite leave to remain for 1 year, then apply for a passport. What I didn't know was that in 2002, I'd already been in the UK for 10 years. There's this thing called the 10-year route. So I could have just applied for a passport then and then, right? Or indefinite leave to remain and then a passport. But lawyers do as lawyers do. They realized that if I went down the route they were sending me, I'm sure they would get 3 bites of the cherry in terms of fees. And I didn't understand immigration rules, so I was like, I just did what they asked me. Remember, this isn't about money. They were paying for the process. By 2009, I had my ILR for 1 year, and they called me and they said, look, it's time to get your passport. Send us your passport. I didn't even have to pay for it. Send us your passport. We'll send it to the office. We'll get you the passport back, and then you can go. So I said to them, how long will they have my passport for? And they said, oh, somewhere between 6 and 9 months. I was like, I can't do that because I'm traveling for work at the drop of a hat all the time. You know, client is panicking in Frankfurt this morning. I'll get on a plane at lunchtime, have a meeting with him at 3 o'clock and fly back. I can't give you my passport for 6 to 9 months. Because remember, there's only 2 of us on the desk. When things calm down, I'll send you my passport. This is 2009. Then 2 years later, working 20-hour days every day, it just wasn't able to do it because the process is just process. Just because I didn't want to be not able to do that part of my job, I didn't send the passport, my Ghana passport, to get the UK passport. I just, you know, waiting for a moment, it never came, and then the loss happened.
Do you regret it?
It would have saved a lot of heartache. You know, if I had gone through that last step of the process, none of this would have happened. All this pain and suffering from my family, from my UK friends and family. I bet you anything, even the Home Office, I bet even they wish that I just got the passport so they didn't have to go through the process that we've gone through. Because you know what, I think at the end, even they were ashamed. They were ashamed of the process. That's why they did it on the same day that they knew all the headlines in the UK would be about Brexit. So no one would be watching.
Oh.
I think even they were ashamed. Because in the end, everybody knows what they've done is wrong. Everybody knows that they've had to manipulate like crazy to achieve it. Why? Because actually, when someone has lived somewhere for 26 years, and that person isn't a threat to the country, we all know deep down that deportation is the wrong thing to do. Unfortunately for them, so many people are watching that the noise is not dying down. And even though I'm not there, it has become a fight for a change in the policy, because what we're saying is those who were born in the UK or grew up here from an early age, they're not guests. They are part of you. You created them. They're British. So if something goes wrong, it's the Britishness in them that went wrong. It's not the Ghanaian in me that caused the crime. It's because I was a product of the financial system, the British financial system. So where is the morality in deporting someone to somewhere they left when they were 4 years old, as if that place is responsible for their behavior? It's not because I was born in Ghana that this thing happened. They know that it's wrong. And everyone, all the campaigners are fighting because they know if we don't get the policy changed so that those born in the UK or who grew up there from a young age can no longer routinely be deported, as Stephen Shaw asked in the review that was accepted by the Home Office on the 24th, the Home Secretary on the 24th of July, then it will be bad for the UK in terms of its moral integrity and in terms of the fiber of its community. So they are still fighting.
How is your family taking all of this?
Of course they've supported me because they understand what is actually at stake. The ability for me to continue to do the work I'm doing very much depends on whether or not I was deported. But at the same time, I think everyone is happy that, well, as I've said a number of times, we are free. For the first time, we are free.
Did your dad, for instance, get to hear your side of the story, or he read it in the headlines? Because if he read it in the headlines, it would have meant something different.
My dad sat through the trial, the whole trial.
I mean, the day you were arrested.
He was in Ghana when I was arrested. He flew to the UK pretty much immediately. He came and visited me in prison.
Did he get to hear of your arrest, as in, did you have to tell him? Or
no, he heard of my arrest through the news. So I had been arrested. I was in Bishopsgate Police Station, and my lawyer came in and rather flippantly just said, well, at least you're #1 on Global News. And I was like, oh my God, my parents.
How's that supposed to make anybody excited?
You know, as if it's some drama. You know, it's like, again, this ability sometimes, I don't know whether it's because of the color of my skin, but this inability of people in the criminal justice system and immigration system to see that I'm a human rather than just a banker or just a part of a machine. The inability to see, I think it's because they don't identify with me because of the color of my skin. We all agree that the UK criminal justice system is racist. Even my MP says that. We all agree. Right? David Lammy MP for Tottenham, did an analysis. The criminal justice system in the UK is racist. Even the Prime Minister herself said it. On the steps of Downing Street, she said, if you are black or working class white male, you are treated worse by the criminal justice system than anyone else, right? So we know it's racist. So they don't identify. That's why they can say something flippantly like that and not realize that human beings like my mother and father are sitting in Ghana, and the first they're going to know about this thing is on BBC News. And that must be heartbreaking for a parent, of course, heartbreaking.
Did he tell you about, I mean, what were the first, what sort of conversation did you have when you first met him? Or when he came over to see you?
Exactly the kind of conversation you'd expect between a father and a son. How are you?
Oh, how are you?
Are you okay? You're in prison. All he cares about is your well-being. Are you okay? Is everything all right?
What happened?
Are you safe? What happened? We have the conversation. Then the conversation moves to, okay, so what are you going to do? Guilty, not guilty? What's the pathway? And why? So the conversation eventually gets to, okay, I'm going to plead not guilty for these reasons, the reasons I've already said. And then, okay, well, whatever you decide, we are behind you. So this is the same for my friends as well as my parents. And then he had the burden, is the only way I can put it, of sitting through the trial and watching the way in which things were said, the way in which the trial was conducted, the ridiculous things that were said by the prosecutor. But at the end, I think we just all accepted. You know, it was okay, this happened. You've tried to deal with it with dignity by standing up and telling the truth and being open completely when everyone else is not being open and generally are lying. But you have done the right thing, and so for that reason, I'm proud. That's all.
Do you feel, or did you at any point in time feel let down by your employers, UBS?
I feel that when they knew what really drove my decision making and my character. They knew what kind of person I was. And they launched an operation to destroy my character, because they knew that if they didn't do that, then my colleagues would come and stand up for me. Do you know, the day before I was deported, on Tuesday, I got an email from one of my former colleagues, another trader on the FX desk, basically saying, I was going to give evidence, but the bosses realized what I might say and asked me not to. Now, we are bringing up stories of the past. My focus here is to look to the future. I think it's time now for us all to say 7 years is a long enough time. No matter what happened or how it happened, it's time for us to look forward. And the way we look forward is we say, what can we learn from this journey? And what can I give now to Ghana? And how can I support those back in the UK who are still fighting? They are fighting both for me to be given back the right to be able to go to the UK, which is my other home, but also they are fighting for a change in the law. That is my focus. We've moved on now from the 7 years.
Does it mean that you haven't quite given up on your deportation?
Yes, I mean, I don't think we can. Although my focus is building my life here, I don't think we can, because it's unjust, and the punishment that it represents will never go away, but also because this is a really important moment for us to realize that the policies are wrong. It's a moment where people are standing up. So many people in the UK. I mean, there was a letter written, an article written in The Guardian that came out today, I think, basically saying exactly what I was saying before. The Home Office statement of those who abuse our hospitality. You can't say that about a child who grew up in the UK, who spent more than 2/3 or whatever of his life. So the fight is not just about me. You know, what might happen is the policy will change, right? The people who have been fighting with me will continue that fight, and the policy will change, but I won't be included. If that's what happens, I think that was worth it. right? My suffering will have led to a positive change. I might not benefit from it, but that's okay.
All right. And so you heard it to maybe Kweku Adoboli, the former UBS trader. And that concludes Joy News Prime for tonight. My name is Israel.